a routine checkup turned into a life-changing revelation that forced Norah O'Donnell to face a terrifying truth. What was found beneath the surface would not only shock her, but also serve as a powerful wake-up call to millions. This is the story that no one saw coming until Norah O'Donnell broke down in tears and told everyone about her deadly diagnosis. The words "face of journalism" were displayed on TV, news websites and social media sites, getting the attention of millions. This time the headline wasn't about a political scandal, a foreign duet. It wasn't about a crisis or breaking news story, it was about Norah O'Donnell's sad death. For decades, O'Donnell had been a model of hard-hitting journalism, whether she was interviewing world leaders, reporting from war zones, or breaking down complicated issues for the public. She was seen as a pillar of strength, and her poise and sharp intellect made her one of the most trusted voices in American media. Her path into journalism was fueled by an education. She was raised in a military family, with discipline, resilience, and a deep respect for honesty, all of which would later define her career. She did well in school, went to Georgetown University, and quickly made a name for herself in political reporting. In a world where trust in the media was often shaken, O'Donnell was a constant, giving the facts with clarity and precision. Her rise through the ranks of journalism was nothing short of extraordinary, and she became a well-known face. She had grown up in American homes and watched some of the most important events in history, like presidential elections, global conflicts, economic crises, and national tragedies. She had seen the world change in real time, often being on the front lines of history. From the war zones of Afghanistan to the halls of the White House, she had been through the toughest places, bringing stories to life with her trademark depth and insight. But nothing she had done could have prepared her for the news she was about to hear. For years, she had been telling stories of strength, medical progress, and the power of the human will. Now she was in the middle of one of the biggest stories of the decade, and millions of viewers were watching. Norah O'Donnell was the picture of calm, poised, articulate, and unwavering calm as she told some of the most important news stories of the decade as the anchor of CBS Evening News. She had built a reputation for being a trusted journalist in a time when the truth often seemed elusive, but what people saw on TV was just behind the camera, away from the clean set and bright studio lights. The pressure was constant. Every morning started long before the sun came up. By the time the city was still in the dark, Norah was already awake and reading through a mountain of reports, memos, and briefs. She carefully went through breaking news stories, cross-referencing sources to make sure that every word she said on air was backed by facts. Her job wasn't just reading from a teleprompter, it was about understanding what she was saying. By mid-morning, she was already in back-to-back meetings planning coverage, editing scripts, and coordinating with field reporters stationed around the world. She worked in a high-stakes industry, where seconds could mean the difference between being ahead of the news cycle and falling behind, so every second counted. Her team relied on her to make decisions, but that trust came with a huge responsibility. Production meetings turned into editorial discussions, correspondents sent in their latest reports, and Norah had to judge the constant stream of live feeds and pre-recorded segments. Even small changes, like a missing statistic, an unverified source, or an unexpected global crisis, could throw the whole broadcast into chaos at the last minute. But the pressure didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. As one of the most famous women in broadcast journalism, Norah was constantly being watched. Every word she spoke was being broken down. A single misplaced phrase could start a controversy. Her wardrobe choices made headlines. Were they too formal or too casual? Was she approachable while still being authoritative? The standards she had to meet were high, and there wasn't much room for error in a field where decisions are made quickly and people have high expectations. There was no off switch. Even after the evening news, her work wasn't done. She prepared for the next day's coverage, called sources late at night, and kept a close eye on stories as they happened. The world never stopped moving, and neither did she. Somewhere along the way, she had started ignoring herself. Didn't realize it had been so long since her last full health checkup. At first, it didn't seem important because she felt great, was on a strict routine, exercised regularly, and ate well. She had learned how to deal with stress and thrive in chaos, but even the most fit body has limits. I had these yearly skin checks and I had gone 2 years ago to my dermatologist, Dr. Elizabeth Hale, she said later. I checked some things and everything was fine too. Years went by before she realized she was overdue for a checkup. The signs had been there for a while: a dull headache, aches that lasted longer than usual, and mental fatigue that she thought was just part of the job. She kept going because she couldn't quit, but what she didn't know was that her body had been trying to tell her something the whole time, and soon she would find out the truth. She couldn't ignore the woman behind the headlines any longer. Norah Odin is known for her breaking news coverage and unwavering dedication to the truth. As the anchor of CBS Evening News, she has spent years covering the world's most important stories, from political upheavals to global crises. But behind the polished broadcasts and carefully structured reports lies a personal story that didn't start in the bright lights of the newsroom, but in the warmth of a Texas childhood long before she became a reporter. Norah, a well-known name, was just a girl with big dreams who grew up in San Antonio, Texas. She was raised in a close-knit military family that taught her a strong sense of discipline, resilience, and an unbreakable work ethic. Her father was a career military officer who often moved the family from place to place, exposing young Norah to different cultures, points of view, and experiences that would later shape her career as a journalist. But San Antonio was home, and it was there that her ambitions began to grow from a young age. Norah was always pushing herself to do her best, whether it was in school, sports, or extracurricular activities. She was not only an A+ student, but also a track runner, a cheerleader, and an active participant in debate competitions. Her confidence was clear, and her energy was endless. She had a thirst for knowledge and a natural curiosity about the world. Traits that would later make her a great journalist. But like many teenagers in the 1980s and 1990s, she didn't worry about sun exposure. As a child in Texas, where the sun shines almost all year, Norah spent many afternoons outside running, swimming, and just enjoying the golden warmth. Sunscreen wasn't always a priority. At the time, it wasn't even a thought. At the time, society saw tanned skin as a sign of health. Beauty and Vitality magazines praised bronzed skin, and tanning beds became a cultural phenomenon. Like many of her peers, Norah followed the trend and spent hours in the sun without thinking about the long-term effects. As she got older, her focus changed. Journalism became her passion, and with it, an unwavering drive to succeed. She continued her education at Georgetown University, where she graduated with a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy and later a Master of Arts in Liberal Studies. It was there that she improved her communication skills by learning about politics, international relations, and the constantly changing media landscape. Her career took off quickly, and she got her first major role as a reporter. As a staff writer for Roll Call, she covered Congress and learned the ins and outs of political reporting. She quickly rose through the ranks, showing that she was a reporter who wasn't afraid to ask tough questions or dig deep for the truth. She covered presidential campaigns, global conflicts, and some of the most important events in modern history. Her hard work and talent led her to NBC News, where she became a White House correspondent, and then to CBS News, where she solidified her reputation as one of the most respected reporters in the world. Despite all of her professional success, she had neglected one thing: her own health. The drive that propelled her career had also made her used to long hours, high stress, and often putting herself last. At first, the signs were subtle and easy to miss in the rush of deadlines and live broadcasts. After all, she had spent years reporting on health crises, medical breakthroughs, and public awareness campaigns for the news, but she had never stopped to think about her own. Norah O'Donnell had put off a routine dermatology checkup for over 2 years because, like many busy professionals, she put work deadlines and important commitments ahead of her own health. It wasn't because she was careless, she just thought there wasn't a need because there weren't any visible symptoms or urgent concerns. When she finally made an appointment with Dr. Elizabeth Hale, a well-known dermatologist, she wasn't expecting anything more than a standard checkup. This assumption was about to be tested. During the exam, Dr. Hale paused while looking at Norah's back for a moment of hesitation, a closer look, and an observation that suggested something more than a routine screening. "There are 2 spots here that I'd like to look at more closely," Dr. Hale said. Clinically, skin cancer screenings are an important but often overlooked part of preventive healthcare. Many people think that they are not at risk if they don't have any symptoms or a family history of cancer. But research has shown melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer, can appear slowly and without warning. In Norah's case, a biopsy was done, and even though it was quick, it had big effects. She was told that the results would be available after Thanksgiving, which she mentally filed away but didn't dwell on, because the reality of the situation hadn't yet set in. Medical diagnoses often come out of the blue, interrupting normal moments with life-changing effects. For Norah O'Donnell, that meant that on Thanksgiving, Norah was casually checking her phone during a family gathering when she saw an email from Dr. Elizabeth Hale with the subject line, "Please call me right away." The urgency was clear, so Norah got up from the table to make the call. The person on the other end of the line spoke right away, and Dr. Hale's tone made it clear that Norah had melanoma in situ, which is the earliest stage of melanoma that is limited to the outer layer of the skin. Even though the skin cancer is easily treatable at this point, the diagnosis still carries weight. The word melanoma alone is enough to make you scared, given how aggressive it can be if it's not found. Dr. Hale went on to explain the next steps, saying that surgery was necessary to stop the cancer from spreading. The good news is that we caught it early, but we need to act quickly. Dr. Hale stressed that the diagnosis was a life-changing moment, saying that getting a cancer diagnosis is often like time-stopping. If you're a veteran journalist like Norah O'Donnell, hearing the words "you have skin cancer" was a shocking reality that she never saw coming. Even though she had spent years reporting on medical breakthroughs and public health crises, she found herself in a new and deeply personal battle that forced her to face her own death. The diagnosis wasn't just a medical event, it was a deep psychological and emotional reckoning. Her first reaction was shock, and then she tried to figure out what this meant for her future. Cancer, no matter what form or how bad it is always a heavy thought, because it means the body has turned against itself, which can make a person feel out of control. As she sat there in silence trying to process what it all meant, a huge wave of emotions hit her. Fear, uncertainty, and vulnerability replaced the steady confidence she had built up over the course of her career. Unlike the controlled environment of a newsroom, this was a very personal story. It wasn't something that should be reported from a professional distance. It was her own life, her own health, and her own fight. Having her family there made the emotional impact stronger. Her husband Jeff Tracy noticed the change in her behavior right away. He was there for her and would never leave her side, but his reassurances couldn't take away her fear. The couple's 3 children, who are still too young to fully understand the complexities of a medical diagnosis, instinctively recognized the situation. Their innocent curiosity and worry turned a deeply private struggle into a shared family reality when her son asked her with the sincerity only a child can possess if she could die from the disease. It was a question that cut through her defenses. It wasn't just about her own fears anymore. It was about what this meant for those who depended on her. She had to be strong for her children right away, to protect them from the worst possibilities. She spoke calmly even though she was upset inside, because she had learned how to do that as a journalist. The doctors caught it early, she said, but no amount of work experience could have prepared her for the battle she was now facing inside. Knowing that early detection greatly improved her prognosis was reassuring in theory, but the uncertainty of treatment, recovery, and the chance of recurrence loomed large beyond the moment of disclosure. The diagnosis was the start of a long and difficult journey that, it was a reminder that even people who seem calm and strong in public can have hard times. The challenge wasn't just to fight the disease itself, but also to deal with the mental toll it would take on her and those closest to her. For Norah O'Donnell, this diagnosis was more than just a medical condition. It was a test of endurance, faith, and the ability to deal with an uncertain future while holding on to hope. The battle began in January. She thought she was ready for the day that would change her life forever. She had talked to her doctors about the procedure, listened to their reassurances, and tried to convince herself that she was ready. But nothing could really get her ready for when she was wheeled into that cold, sterile operating room, and the bright surgical lights cast an almost surreal glow over the space. The procedure was much more intense than she had expected. The incision was deep and layers of tissue were carefully cut. As a painful attempt to remove what had quietly taken root inside her body, over 20 stitches ran along her skin, leaving a jagged mark that would always remind her of the battle. When she finally saw the scar for the first time, it gave her chills. It wasn't just medical terms or a diagnosis on paper, it was real. It had been growing inside her without her knowing it. The thought made her stomach turn. What if she had waited longer? What if she had ignored the symptoms thinking they were nothing? She had always thought of herself as strong, determined, and in some ways unbeatable, but now she saw the truth. Her life was more fragile than she had ever let herself believe. The emotional toll was terrible. The physical pain, while sharp and constant, was bearable. It was the emotional burden that she couldn't handle. Norah had always been proud of her strength and ability to deal with whatever life threw at her, but for the first time, she felt like she couldn't. During her 6-week recovery period, she felt a strange sense of helplessness and vulnerability that filled the gaps between her usual confidence and the deep-seated fear that had taken root in her mind. She could no longer rely on the one thing that had always kept her grounded: movement. Exercise had been more than just a habit. It was her escape, her therapy, and her way of turning her stress into something useful. Now she had to rest, and her body hurt from both the surgery and the forced stillness. Not being able to work out for 6 weeks was one of the hardest things for her. She later said, "I was upset. It also made me realize how important exercise is to mental health. I really was down in the dumps over the diagnosis, and then not being able to exercise had a big effect on my mood." The frustration built up inside her. She wanted to push through to defy the limits that were put on her, but her body wouldn't let her. She felt like she had lost control over her own body. Next came the physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. The weight of her diagnosis, the uncertainty of what lay ahead, and the constant reminder that she wasn't invincible, all pressed down on her like an invisible force. Depression crept in quietly and without warning. The weight of her overwhelming thoughts about what this meant for her future and whether she would ever feel like herself again, along with the stress of her job, made her less determined than usual. She had always done well under pressure. But this time it was different. The expectations and demands felt like they were suffocating her, and even the smallest tasks drained her energy. She had spent years defining herself by how strong she was, and how well she could handle anything, but now she had to stop for the first time, and in that stillness she realized something unsettling. She wasn't in control anymore. Her life had changed in an instant, and she had no choice but to face it. Early-stage melanoma is often missed because it can look like a harmless mole or a small discoloration. The American Academy of Dermatology stresses how important early detection is, saying that survival rates are as high as 99% when melanoma is caught in its early stages. However, delays in diagnosis greatly reduce those odds. For Norah, the consequences were immediate. She had spent years writing about medical advances, health crises, and stressing the importance of early intervention. She was living the reality she had talked about in the news. It was no longer a story, it was her life. What happened next was a difficult decision-making process that showed how important it is to be aware of skin cancer and get medical help right away. Norah O'Donnell opens up. No one was surprised when she told them she had cancer. They had been following her journey, her advocacy for early detection, and her unwavering dedication to spreading awareness about skin cancer. As she sat in front of the camera with tears in her eyes, she told the truth that no one knew before. She wasn't just fighting cancer. She was also fighting time. For months, she thought she was clear because her treatment was harsh but effective, and regular scans showed no signs of further disease. Each checkup reinforced the idea that she had caught it early and beaten it, but as she said in an interview, that wasn't the whole story. Norah O'Donnell starts crying and talks about her fatal diagnosis. "I thought I had won. I thought I had done everything right," she says. Her skin cancer, which was first thought to be limited to a localized area, had spread beyond the surface. What was once a single treatable lesion had left microscopic traces behind cells too small to detect at first, but dangerous enough to multiply beneath the surface. The words hit her hard. It was the height of irony. Even a journalist who had spent years writing about medical progress, even having access to the best doctors, she couldn't stop the unpredictable nature of cancer. What made her case even more scary was how quietly the disease had spread. There were no symptoms, no fatigue, no weight loss, and no pain. Her voice faltered as she talked about the hard treatment, the weeks of infusions, the crippling side effects, and the uncertainty of whether it would work. She remembered the moment she realized her fight wasn't just about herself. She had spent her career demanding others tell the truth, and now it was her duty to be honest with her family and the millions of people who had been following her journey, no matter how painful it was. "The fight's never over," she said, breaking down in tears. "It's never over for any of us." Norah O'Donnell's honest words cut through the air like a sharp reminder that life can test you in ways you never expect.